Welcome everybody to the Renaissance myON webinar. Today we've got a team from Renaissance to include Heather Miller, who is the field account executive, Michael Cunning. And Michael, I'm not sure what your exact title is, but I know you are part of the Nebraska team, so and many may recognize Mike. And then Mallory Hartnett, which I will call the subject expert today, possibly. I define myON, I guess. My quick definition would be a literacy platform through digital books, and I'm sure the Renaissance team will expand upon that today. So I'll hand that over to you and you can start off.
Very good. Thanks, Craig. I mean, that pretty much sums it up. I mean, we don't really know what Mike does. Mallory knows all the product experts and it's digital content. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to do this today. And we're so grateful that we could have a few of you join in person. We love to do these because we get questions a lot about all of the different programs that we offer. And it's so helpful when we can have these webinars. Obviously, it's hard to do during the school day. So then we have the recorded link, that we can, of course, share with other districts. And then like Christy and Bobby, you can share with your teams as well. Based on what we talk about, you can kind of share, what stood out to you. So yes, we are here today to talk about myON. I live in Bennington. I've worked for Renaissance for about 8 years now. The pleasure of getting to work with a lot of different districts across the state. And Mallory's based in Illinois. She is my partner. She definitely is a subject matter expert. Today, we're going to kind of tag team things because it's always a little bit more fun when you're not just hearing from the same person. And our goal is always to spend as much time actually in the product as possible. So that way you can see from both a student and a teacher perspective how things work. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive in here quick. So you all know that we are with Renaissance Learning. What you may not know is that Renaissance has been a very relevant part of the education market for 35 years now. We started out with Accelerated Reader many moons ago in the creator's basement, and it has turned into quite a company. Our mission, we eat, sleep, and breathe this. Very fortunate to work here, knowing that our mission every day is to accelerate learning for all children. And we do that through a number of different programs. As I mentioned, even though we started 35 years ago with Accelerated Reader, we have grown a ton. Like I said, I've been here 8 years and it's tripled. The number of programs that we have has tripled. Mallory's been here 3 years, and it's hard to be a subject matter expert when you keep getting new things thrown at you, but she's done an amazing job with it. So, I did mention Accelerated Reader because that's what we're known for. And certainly this digital library content program that we're going to talk about today works really well with Accelerated Reader, but it also works amazingly well as a standalone program. And we'll share some of the features about that, but really what it comes down to, and the reason that Mallory and I are always excited to talk about myON is because getting kids involved in reading is very near and dear to our hearts. So a program like myON that puts access to books in kids' hands and gets them motivated to read and helps you build out that reading culture. Again, it's one of our favorite things to talk about. We can do it all day long. So dive in here. Just like I said, a few slides that we'll go through to talk high level about features. Then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mallory, and she's going to dive in and show you things from the student perspective. And then I'll go in and show things from the teacher perspective. Since we do have a small group, ask questions, put it in chat. We'll kind of monitor for each other as we're going through. Let's keep this definitely informal. We want to make sure that we're highlighting the main features of the program. So when I sent out the invitation for the webinar, I, of course, focused on a few of the main questions that we typically get from schools and from districts. How do we get our kids motivated to read? How do we provide them all with access to books? How are we basically spreading the quote burden of reading across more subject areas than just our ELA team and that sort of thing? So a lot of different I guess, needs and questions that are out there that tie into why myON makes sense. So when we talk about trying to get our kids to read, the facts show, research shows that most students are reading less than 15 minutes a day. Obviously, this is going to be for K-12, so we know that that changes as students, go through the different grade levels, but less than 15 minutes a day, it's just simply not enough. And so trying to get students to read, again, is a challenge. So because we've been in this market for a long time, we have a ton of research on this, and this is not going to be a surprise to anyone, but the two key factors to really boost student reading would be motivation. And so that's where programs like Accelerated Reader and myON can come in, where we're trying to motivate students to read. We're putting a program into place, when implemented properly, can build just the most wonderful reading cultures. We want to instill that lifelong love of reading in our students. And then the other key factor would be access to books. And this was one that, here in Nebraska, we don't see it as much. Mallory and I have partners that work with, some very large urban areas where very different socioeconomic statuses. Not all students have access to books, not only at home, but their public libraries may not be accessible to them. Their school libraries might be very outdated. And then, we always hear the argument around, well, but we have classroom libraries. Students can get books from that. This is just one important slide that I like to show, because this was mind-boggling to me, to really think about the challenges that schools have, no matter what area of the country you're in. If we're just looking at a classroom library, what it takes to make that effective. And again, mind-boggling. So supposedly we need to have a minimum of 750 books in good condition, and at least 30% of those published in the last 3 to 5 years. Not going to read them all. 50 to 70% nonfiction. That's a huge area of challenge that we're hearing on a regular basis from schools. 15% multicultural, and then of course, multiple copies of popular titles. All very challenging to do. So that is where it's just one example of why we are now in the age of why digital content is extremely important. I talk about that culture of reading, that lifelong love of reading. I have that. Okay. My mom was a librarian. I grew up that way, fully aware that that is not the case across the board. Heck, it didn't even get instilled in my own children. I struggle getting them to love to read, and reading has changed, where, a lot more is being done through digital content. It's a different way of reading, and it has led to some very different reading habits, and it has opened a lot of doors for students. And that is, again, why myON definitely excites me. So what is myON? Craig did a nice job of kind of outlining what it is. Very simply put, it's a digital library, but it's a lot more than that as well. Meaning it's got a blend of fiction and nonfiction. About 70% focus is on the nonfiction side. We've got a current events news article side of it, where 5 articles are published 5 days a week, which, oh, by the way, then link to books that students may be interested in. So a really good way to get them interested in some new content area or subject areas. And then, of course, the different skills that are needed to be able to read digitally, preparing them for college textbooks being digital, for example. So those close reading skills, different tools that are built right into the program for students. And then, oh, by the way, it's also going back to those kind of questions that I brought up in the beginning, meaning how do we get the burden off of only reading falling on the ELA department? So being able to take a program that can be used across your curriculum. So yes, they have access to books, and some districts may want to use it simply to give students access so that every student can have access to the books that they want. But then there's also the other side of it that can be used in a much richer way in terms of being able to use it for maybe a particular unit in social studies. We're working on this particular Nebraska standard. Oh, these books tie to it. We want to engage our students in reading and work on a project for it. to really tie some of those different areas together. Okay, and you'll see that more when we go in live, but just kind of a brief overview that it can be used in a lot of different ways. So a lot more than just digital books. So the equitable access, this is so important. And we really saw this firsthand once COVID hit. I long for the day where the word COVID won't come up in one of our presentations or demos, but it's going to. It's the reality of it. We really saw, students did not have access to reading content. And so what we love about myON is that it is available 24/7. It is an online platform. Every student can be reading the same book at the same time. That's another important piece of it. So it's not a check-in, check-out type process. But then to take it a step further, what about our kiddos that don't have internet access at home or very limited? They're trying to connect to, a caregiver's hotspot, for example. It's very challenging for them to have the same experience that some of the other students do that have full broadband. So one of the really nice features about myON is that there is the ability to download up to 20 books on a device. So say your district or school has an iPad, you can download those books to it, send it home with the student. They can do their reading. As soon as they get back on the network, all of their progress is updated. So it really does tie together that equity piece. Personalized reading. So we go back to the initial part, we have to motivate kids to read and we have to give them access to books. So a big part of motivating kids to read is letting them read things that they are interested in. So through myON, we have it says right here, we have over 7,000 titles in the core collection. And then through additional partner publishers that we work with, you can get that number up to over 15,000 books that kids have access to based on what their interest levels are or the demographics of your individual school. Offering titles and news articles for every reading level and interest. So much like, we watch a show on Netflix and it starts to make recommendations based on what it is that we like, the type of genre, my category. It's not going to recommend kids movies for me, for example. It's going to recommend things for grownups. The same sort of Netflix flavor comes about as your students are reading in the myON program. It makes those recommendations and it allows them to do some self-selections based on what their interest levels are as well. And then, as I mentioned, definitely have the ability to add on additional titles depending on what it is that is important for you. I have some schools that have very high ELL populations that they purposely want to add on more publishers that have bilingual books to give them an opportunity for maybe their parents only speak Spanish. They can read together with their parents through these books. A lot of different ways that these packages can be customized. But I would say a good 70 to 80% of our schools do wonderfully well with that core collection. And as a part of that core collection, you get the middle school and high school classics. So if we think back to that example of a classroom library, for example, having multiple copies of a book, think about when you're in 11th grade and there's a novel that is assigned, every student needs to be reading the same book. You're checking it out of the public library, the school library, parents are buying copies of the book, all of that goes away. They all have the ability to log in and read the exact same book at the exact same time. So Mallory will show this in a lot more detail when she hops in as a student, but these supportive tools also make myON a lot more than just the ability, to read a book online, as I would say on my Kindle. So they can interact with the text with a lot of different supports, as you'll see this list here. A lot of books do have voice narration tied to it. And what I love about it is that it is professionally narrated. So it's not robotic sounding, works wonderfully, especially for some of those lower grade levels where students are really working on practicing their fluency. It can be read to them, and then the student can choose to where the word is highlighted as it's read, so they can really work on building out their fluency. One feature that is new at this back to school season is the student recorded read aloud feature. And I actually have a slide on that coming up next, but huge, as we're really focused on helping students with fluency and take some of that ownership into their own hands. We'll take a look at that. And then of course, kind of some of the things that you would expect, the built-in dictionary. I will show from the teacher perspective what it looks like to create some customizable assignments and some projects to really make things cross-curricular and get students involved. So this is that slide that talks about that read aloud feature. Again, we were really excited for this. I'll let you just kind of look at the slide here briefly, as I'll just share an example. I was on a presentation the other day, and it was an elementary school principal. She was talking about the fact that for their upcoming parent-teacher conferences, their first grade class, she has a teacher that has really kind of jumped on board with this. Every student, as part of their portfolio that gets shared with their caregivers, they are recording. There's a recording of whatever book they pick out that's their favorite, and that is being shared at their parent-teacher caregiver conferences. So what a wonderful way to be able to show, here's how I'm reading, here's what's happening. And of course, can be used in a lot of different ways in terms of helping to practice fluency. Teachers can go back and listen to it. Students can rate themselves, help kind of figure out words that they were struggling with. But again, just a wonderful feature. Okay, I'm going to pause there because we're going to go live next. Mallory, are there any questions that have popped up while I've been talking extremely fast because I want to give you time to go into the program?
No, nothing yet, but feel free to put in the chat if you have any questions once you start to see it live in the demo here.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to kick things over to Mallory. I'm going to stop sharing so you can hop in, and I'll let you go ahead and log in and show us things from the student perspective. Yes, Christy, it does work on Chromebooks. Great question. It works basically, and sorry, Mallory, it works basically on any screen. I mean, I've even seen it used on phones. I don't necessarily recommend it, but yes, Chromebooks, iPads, you name it, you're good.
All right, well, I'm going to hop in here now and show you the student experience side of things and just kind of how all of this works together. I'm really excited to kind of share this connection. If you do have some other Renaissance products, you can see here, this is the student login page. And so you can see kind of how all of this lands on one page together. So as a student logs in, whatever products you have from Renaissance, they will see that tile here, and you'll see myON there as well. And it's just one single login for all of these for both teachers and students. They'll click in, and now you can see the student is within their dashboard for myON. So there's a variety of dashboards for students based on goal setting. It's appropriate for the age level that they are working in, what the goal setting feature looks like here. But this would be for an elementary school student. Again, like Heather said, it's available though for K through 12. If you have the STAR assessments or accelerated reader, it will connect with that. So you can see here the student's STAR reading score is displayed. If you don't have those though, myON can still work independently. And so it's a great way for students. They'll come in, they'll take a modified little assessment to determine their reading level. And then as Heather mentioned, it's very personalized library that comes in for the student that's at their appropriate reading level. So there'll be recommended texts that are things that they are able to read. And then they can kind of choose what they would like to read from there. So this is just the main landing page as students come in. They can see books that are recommended for them. They can see maybe things that they've read before or books that they've recently opened. They can also just pick up right where they left off with the last book that they have opened, and it will mark their spot and save it if they had been reading it previously. Students have their library, and so within the library, again, they can go a little bit deeper into some recommended readings. They can filter through because I like, they can start to filter through maybe certain subject areas. So like Heather kind of mentioned, you could do some cross-curricular areas within here as well. Students also have the ability to browse just based on genres and create their own bundles, which I can hop into here in a second. But what I really want to show you is what that student experience looks like when they hop into a book that they're reading. So I'm going to go into a nonfiction book, since Heather had mentioned that we have a lot of nonfiction text. I'm a former teacher too, and I know how hard it is to have that, all that within your library, even your school library, or that the nonfiction is up to date. So I think the abundance of nonfiction in here is really amazing for kids. Students can get some information about the book before they read it, so they can kind of see grade range. They can see if there's a guided reading level tagged with it. If there is an AR quiz, it will be here for them to see as well. But then they have the option here to either read it, to record their voice, or to add it to their favorites and save it for later. This record is what Heather was just speaking about, where it's that recording feature where students are able to record their own voice. They can play it back and hear it, and then the teacher can hear it as well. So I love that idea of even using it at conferences to kind of show, even it could show growth, right? So if you have conferences in the fall and then the spring, like look at how the student's fluency has changed so much. When a student goes in to read, they will either pick up where they left off or start that book over. You can see they'll be given the cover, the title page, everything is exactly the same and interactive, just like a regular book would be if they had it in their hands. And then as students go through, they will just scroll through page by page as they can read. So as Heather mentioned too, the audio is read by an actual person, so it helps with that fluency piece. You'll hear expression within the audio, so I can give you an example here.
The sky. Look at the sky. What do you see? At night, we see the moon and stars.
So as you can hear, it's read for that student in not an auto-generated way. Then as students are reading, they can go ahead and if they say they come across a word that they don't understand, they can click that word. And again, they have that option to view in the dictionary. So now it's going to give students that definition there to the right. It'll also give examples and related words. So really helping with that 21st century learner that we're starting to really foster within the classroom setting. We want to make sure that students are ready to search things online too, right? And so this is kind of building that capacity. It's great for students to learn how to use the dictionary, but we want to build that capacity in this environment as well. So they have that definition here for them available for pretty much any word. I don't think I've come across a word yet that isn't defined in there. Then students can continue to read. If they get to something here, say they get to this page and they want to maybe use a different tool, there are other tools available. So one other feature is that they can highlight. So you can either highlight a sentence or a phrase, right? I know I've heard some teachers use it as like a sight word hunt possibly. So maybe they have their first graders go in and they have to find certain sight words. So they have to highlight the sight words as they find them in the text. It saves all of this information, which I think is really awesome. And then the teacher can go in and also see the student's work. So on the teacher side, you can pull up, for example, Heather's text, and I can see everything that Heather did when she interacted with the text. So a really nice way to understand what the students are doing when they interact with this text. It's not just like you sit it and read it and then it's done, but you can really use it for teachable moments as well. So then all of that will save as students go through. Another neat feature, I think, is this Post-it. And so what students can do is they can go in and create a Post-it note here. Say they read this page and they want to create some sort of question or a connection. There are all these different ways that they can interact with this Post-it. So maybe they'd write something about how they're surprised about what they read. Maybe you asked them to make a connection in a fiction text, right? So connect with one of the characters in the book. So maybe they type their connection here. Maybe they write something they loved, or maybe they just have a question that they have when they read this page. So say I read this book about stars and I want to say, it says that, talks about how stars are big and what they look like and how they're so far away and they're gigantic balls of burning gas. So I want to know, like, is the sun a star? I can put that in there. It'll save my question, and then the teacher will be able to see that question in the student's text. So another great way for students to interact, and it's not just that reading piece, but a really nice tool, I think, that could have endless purposes for it. So either the kids come up with it or the teachers can have that focus in there, but a great way to make notes while they read. One other feature here is the journal. And so the journal here is on the right-hand side. And what I think is neat about the journal is that it carries from text to text. So say I'm reading all of these nonfiction texts and I'm trying to collect facts about space. I can have this journal and I could title it Space Facts, and then I'm putting in here each fact that I'm collecting from different texts. or maybe it's just something where I'm making a connection to what I'm reading. So I can have a new entry and I can title it whatever I want and journal whatever I want, but it will carry from book to book. So the next time I open a new book, I can see all of these journal entries, which is just a really nice way to basically have a digital notebook for kids, right? But it's all within the platform for them. So at a high level, myON definitely is that digital library, but there's so much more in it and how the students can interact with the text. And it's not just those digital books, like maybe what we have just like on our Kindle, right? But there's so much more they can do to actually use it as a teaching or a learning tool. And then when I exit out here, so even before I exit, just if the student were to say, they would never do this, right? But if they just try to click all the way through and don't read the book and they wanted to say it counts for something, myON will actually pop up and say, you know what? You didn't spend enough time reading. You need to go back in and read more. So they can't just like click through all the pages and be like, look, I read a book today. So that is another kind of built-in wall for students to make sure that they are reading as they're interacting with these books. Like I said, though, after the student reads, they can go in and they can actually take that AR quiz. And so if you do have accelerated reader, I think the nice feature is it's one click, and you can see here now it loaded right into accelerated reader. So if you do have that feature, it is really nice that it's all built in there and it takes me right to that quiz. And then I can exit out of it and go right back into myON and read another book. So it's all hand in hand there for the student to interact with it. And then one additional feature I just wanted to show, I did mention that students can favorite books. They can also create bundles here. And so, for example, if I were learning about habitats, another feature with that nonfiction maybe, I can create a bundle for myself of all the books I want to read about habitats. So I can kind of start in that early research phase, like finding the text I'm going to look at, and then go through and then reading each book. So just another nice way for kids to stay kind of organized within here too, where they can kind of make it their own bookshelf, their own library. It's all geared around their interests. And then if they did have recordings, they would appear here too. So you could read or listen to all of your recordings of anything that you've read out loud as well. I see some things have popped in the chat here, Heather. Is there anything that hasn't been answered already through? I haven't been monitoring that there. I think you're muted there.
I've been managing. I actually muted myself so they wouldn't hear me typing. No, some really great questions, and we've been answering them. There is, Mallory, you might know, I actually just posed the question to the rest of our team. Do you know where we're at for the number of books that have the audio narration? And isn't there a way for us to search? Under the search feature, can we search by audio?
I do believe so. I think it is in the filters here.
That's what I thought, but I just did the same thing and I didn't see it.
Yeah. Yep, here. So it's
There
story
it is.
type. You can choose yes or no audio. So you can choose what you want to filter by. And this is in the student side. The teachers can also filter and push out books with audio. And I believe that feature can even be turned on or off if you want kids to read without that audio.
Yeah. So while you're there, just real briefly, this is a nice, can we just show here for the search feature? So asking the number of books that are narrated. So we could just run one right here that shows, she could just search for only those with audio and it would show us the total number. Granted, we are also we're in the demo site, which means we have access to all the publishers as well. So it's going to show 7,500 books. So we know that that's, if we went down to the core collection, it would be definitely less than that. I was thinking we were probably around 50% for the number of books that have the narration, but then through this feature, this search feature, we can also figure out some other things in terms of what Christy asked, how many books are available at each reading level. So you can see there, you can search by reading level, and then you know, you can look in a lot of different ways to see what is all available, and we can kind of play around with this. And I'm sure we've got it broken down somewhere for the core collection that's not showing absolutely everything. That's one of the downsides of, I guess, working in a demo account. We have everything, but that's a very good question, and we can definitely get some answers there. But this is a nice way to show how that search feature works as well from the student perspective.
Yeah, and you can see it's pretty easy. Like I searched either fiction or nonfiction books. I think I'm in 3rd grade nonfiction books with audio, and I have 3,000 books here, right? So just a lot in here to choose from. And again, students can even search a topic, right? So if I want to just search space with those same features, here's 61 books about space in 3rd grade with audio. So you can see here there is quite a bit in the whole collection in itself. And then kids again can just take it, favorite it, and then they can add it to a bundle later. So very easy for them to do. Then when they go into their favorites, it should populate that is a book that I had favorited. It's right there.
Yep.
And I can easily just drag it places and it drops into a bookshelf if I need it there.
Yes. So okay, so 2 more questions this while we're here. One was around if the student quote reads the book with the narration on, will that be a determining factor when they're taking the quiz? The answer to that is no, because it's a comprehension quiz. So the idea is that they're understanding, the story and, things about the character and whatnot. It's not going to ask the student if it was necessarily narrated through myON. It's going to ask this part. Yes, Mallory, you beat me to it.
Yeah, so it'll show, they just choose. I was read to, I read with someone, or I read by myself. So just you as the teacher would teach them what those terms mean, right? Like giving them real life examples for those younger kids. Yeah. And then they would know, like if I use the audio, we would click I was read to probably.
Yes, perfect. And then another question, could we please see a middle school view? So we're in a demo account. So the platform remains the same, where they would log in to Renaissance, click the tile. The interface changes, and Mallory touched on this briefly. The interface changes based on the age of the student. I don't mince words when it comes to this. We all know in a software program, if a middle schooler sees something and it's quote too babyish, they want nothing to do with it. So our developers know this, right? To where the interface changes based upon what the age level of that student is. The books that are recommended to them also alter. Just because they're at a very high reading level, for example, it's still going to take the age appropriateness at that higher book level into account for that student.
Yeah, and so some of the features that might change is like what the goal setting looks like. Like I think for those kinder 1st grade or maybe even 2nd grade, it's more of like a plant that's growing, or they have like those AR buddies and they have characters that they kind of have some buy-in for. This is kind of that intermediate elementary age. And then it's more of just like almost like a speedometer looking meter for those kids that are middle school and on into high school. So a little bit more mature looking, but the content itself, or the platform itself, is very similar. It's just the rigor of the book is what they'd be looking at.
Same thing. Another great example of that would be on the interest inventory, when the student logs in and really kind of goes through and shows what types of books they're interested in. For a very elementary age, they're literally choosing, okay, so it's a book about animals, anything from a sad face to a happy face. And then of course, as they get into high school, as they're making that selection, what that looks like is a lot different. Sorry, Mallory, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, that's exactly, that's perfect. This is just, I just clicked in here. So these are 9th grade books. So you can kind of see, like, obviously the text itself looks different and the content, like even the nonfiction books aren't as like kiddie looking, right?
Yeah. Perfect. Okay.
Anything else here in the student platform, where I can let you head into the...
I think we're good. Yep.
All right.
Okay, so I am now in my demo teacher account. Hopefully you can see this okay. I've been dropping a few different things into the chat. One being when Mallory was showing that read aloud feature, I dropped a little link to a blog in there. So make sure and grab that if you can. But here I am logged in as a teacher to my own personal demo account. That it's a little dated, but you know how it is when you build some content out, you like to keep that handy. So it looks very similar when I'm in as a teacher. I can easily click on to see what it would look like from a student perspective. but I will see, the same tabs across the top because I'm, searching for things for my students, but then there's other things added in as well. So the example that I'll first jump into here is under standards. So when we talked about how to use this with other subject areas. One example here, my son happens to be in 7th grade. I kind of know what they're studying right now. So I just hopped in to give an example here. So I can search the Nebraska standards, the 2019 social studies standards, 7th grade, and then I just randomly chose the subsection of civics. And then it brings up this menu. Okay. And so I'm just going to randomly go to this one here, analyze how governmental systems have changed over time. We can see which social studies standard this is tied to for Nebraska. And then it gives me these different options. It provides these different books that are in the myON library that would be tied to those particular standards. So from there, I can either add it to my favorite because then maybe I want to create a bundle to push out to my students, or I can go ahead and add these books to a project that is either already created or I want to go in and create my own project. So that's just a very quick view on how to utilize the standards. Obviously, you kind of use your imagination. You can think of a lot of different ways in which this would come in handy, but I will then go next into the actual projects because I think this is important to see kind of how it would all tie together. So Millard Public Schools uses myON pretty extensively. When they had updated the social studies standards, we kind of had to revisit some things and went in and tried to see how we could do a better job of utilizing some of these other features that are built in. They were using it a ton to read. And then it turned out, oh, we can be, doing a lot more with it. So here's just a sample of a project that we put together for them. And this was for 3rd through 5th grade. So in the elementary schools, you can see we titled it was Arbor Day. So they're doing a unit on Arbor Day, trying to learn more about it, making it a little bit more interactive. We're covering all the subject areas in it. So we created the project, and as a part of it, so there are some news tasks. So there were some different Arbor Day news articles that were in myON News that are then assigned out to students to read. Same thing with some books. It doesn't give a lot of detail on here because I'm trying to show one that's already built, but there were some different books where students were encouraged to self-select a book from a list of 5 and then complete the graphic organizer on it in terms of how did Arbor Day come to be. They're researching the history of it. Then an event timeline. So for math, creating a timeline for a tree, tying things back into Arbor Day, and then a writing task for the students. What is the process of planting a tree? So all these different activities were tied into this, and then it was assigned out to students for them to utilize. It's really neat. There's some different peer review things that are tied to it. A lot can be done with projects. And then what else is really cool about it is that you don't have to start from scratch, meaning any district, any school across the country that is utilizing myON, they have the ability to put their projects out in the cloud that can be shared. So let's see here. A good example, I remember when it was the solar eclipse. Let's just do a quick search here. I'm just going to do a look here to see a lot of different projects that are out there that were designed, for students to tackle when the solar eclipse occurred. So I can look at this. Yes, I like some of this. No, I want to add this in. I can just take an existing project and add to it. So that's just a very quick overview of projects, but we love it because again, it can really tie things together and make it so much more than just that process of having students just read online. So now I'm going to go, Mallory touched on this, how students can create their own bundles based on what their interest levels are. But another nice feature is that teachers can also create bundles. So we obviously know that there's been a large push on social emotional learning and also diversity and inclusion. So the way that this works is I, as a teacher, can go through and I can search, I can browse for different sorts of titles. I add them to my favorites. And then once I have them in my favorites, I can create a bundle of books. So here's one that I have created based on social emotional learning. Got some, very different, a lot of different reading levels. Again, this is just for the example purpose of it, but then can push this out to your students and have them select books from this bundle for them to read. So they don't have to do the searching. They don't have to do any of that. They can simply choose from, a group. It could be any topic area too. Going back to, we searched on standards, we're covering a unit on money. Here are some different books that you can pick from. I, as the teacher, went through and, these ones make sense. These are tied to our Nebraska standards. I want you to go ahead and read a book based on that. So that's just a very brief overview as to how the bundles works. Now, the other one that I want to show here quick would be the reporting feature before we hop into the current events part, which is kind of the icing on the cake. So the reports, so easy to generate, very simple to use. I really love the reporting features built in here. You can see a lot of different things in terms of how much time students are spending reading, but then really digging into what their reading habits look like. It's fun to see, like on a snow day for a school to be able to go back and say, okay, on, December 14th, we had a snow day, but we still had students read this number of books on this day. Can be a really powerful thing to be able to share and help celebrate some of those reading achievements. But this is also then where you can go in and do some different goal setting. So the reports can be generated based on just general use, but then if we're really going back to, we want to encourage our students to be doing more reading, we want to motivate them, and we motivate by helping them hit their goals. So then we maybe go in and set some different goals based upon what it is that we want to see for our students. So I mentioned before, different reading habits tend to apply when it comes to digital reading. I've seen it again in my own children, even my own self. I get different recommendations through my Kindle. I don't always like them. And because I didn't go check it out of the library and have a physical book in my hand, or I didn't go buy it, I'm also like, I'm not going to finish this. Like, I'm just not feeling it. So the book completion rate can be a little bit different when it's digital content, because it's easy just to say, nope, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I want to read something different. This is also what tugs on my heartstrings, where we see children reading different types of books than they normally would have, for, a lot of different reasons. Maybe it's something that they're not comfortable checking out a book on, in the school library for fear of, oh, it looks too babyish, or, oh, why are you reading a graphic novel still? Or we've all heard it. We've all been there. So getting students to feel comfortable with reading things that they're really interested in, it's been really cool to be able to see how digital reading has really helped students with that self-selection process and has made them more comfortable with maybe trying some new things, because even if they don't like it, it's really no harm. They just simply stop reading it and then, choose something else. So long story short, book completion rate can certainly be one of those criteria. It is different, of course, with digital reading. And then maybe what some of the reading habits would be. How much are we encouraging for them to read outside of school area or out of school time? We want them to be reading at home. So on target reading. So we know, with AR, for example, we really focus on having students read the right books at the right level, but we also don't ever want to discourage a student from reading something that they're interested in. So maybe we set a goal for, we want 80% of their reading to occur at this particular level. But if they want to try something that is more challenging, or if they, just need some fun reads to add into the mix, absolutely have at it. So a lot that can be done with the goal setting. And then of course, going back into the reports, you can generate just about anything that you would want to know. It can really be fun to see, okay, for third grade, this was the most popular book last year or the most popular category. It can give you a lot of information about what your students are really interested in, and help celebrate some of those successes. Okay, I'm going to pause here because I saw a few more questions come in before we dive into myON News. So will goals come over from AR? No, I had to think about that for a second. Their goals won't, because they're still two separate. You can set goals in AR and also in myON. But whatever is set in AR is going to be really, for that reading comprehension and that sort of thing, versus this is going to be more around maybe the amount of time that is spent reading. And if we're like, when I show myON News, for example, a goal around how much do we want them reading in current events on a weekly basis compared to reading in books? How much do we want them reading in nonfiction versus fiction? Mallory, do you have anything to add there?
No, that is basically what I was just typing, but the reading levels will come over from like STAR and AR.
Yes, perfect. And then the myON reports sync with and include AR reports. That's a great question. And that is something that is not there yet. So as you probably know, when you run an AR snapshot, it will give you that information based on your students have read this number of books because they've quizzed on them. So they can calculate through an algorithm what that looks like. But then the myON part would be, you would get a separate number for that to show what they're doing just digitally, but knowing that that would factor in to what the AR report is giving you. But the goal is to have that all tied together eventually. Mallory, anything else on that? I'm talking really fast.
No, I think, yeah, you hit all of that. Definitely.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
Ladies, just so I understand it correctly, because
Yes.
like, for example, at the end of the year,
Yep.
husband's an elementary principal, and they take those kids for all day field trip if they've met their goals for 4 quarters.
Yes.
So they would have goals, or they would have like points to show out of each system. They don't tie together right now.
Well, I mean, honestly, for that, if the goal for them is to meet their point goal in AR, meaning that they have achieved whatever their goal is, that they've hit that point goal based upon them taking the comprehension quizzes in AR, then that goal would remain. They're simply using myON as a tool to get to it. I wouldn't say that you necessarily want to then have a different set of goals within myON. The whole point is to support all of those objectives in AR, and they're using myON as the vehicle to do so.
And so like the books, that they could read them online here and then just go back to the AR to take their quizzes. So that's okay.
Yep, exactly. But that is also why by having everything reside on the same platform, that is important so that they can bounce back and forth. But then how Mallory showed, when they finish a book, they can just automatically launch right into that AR quiz. And I don't know if you mentioned it, Mallory, but it is, I think, worth a conversation or of note that there are some quizzes for myON as well. And a lot of students, because that AR goal is what they're really trying to get to, they'll use that myON quiz as kind of a practice. Did I really understand this book? Did I hit the key things? Obviously, knowing that it's going to be different than the AR quiz, but it can help prepare them to take that. Does that help? Did I just make it worse?
Yeah, I think the goal setting, like, you don't want to just set goals to set goals, right? So I think it's just whatever the purpose is within like the classroom or the school. So you could use the goals within myON, or if you are using Accelerated Reader and you want to focus on those, you can set any of them. There's just a lot of different metrics that you can use to kind of customize it.
Yes. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, now I'm hopping in here, going back a few days. myON News. So we're going to be short on time with this, but it's very important, but it's also a very easy concept to grab. We love myON News. So think the old weekly reader on steroids is how I like to think of it. So we publish 5 new news articles a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, and different categories. So we have arts around the world, animals, US, sports, discovery, wacky, and kids in the news. So all these different news categories. And then again, there's 5 articles a day. So I'm on Mondays. I like this one because it has a nice little write-up on a farewell to the Queen. So I'll show this. But I think what's really important to point out is that these are really written for K through 8. And every article has 3 different Lexile levels. So whatever their reading level is, the Lexile level that they read the article in will be closest to what their reading level is. Okay. Everything is reviewed by a child psychologist. So I think this is really important piece to point out. We want kids reading current events. We want them aware of what's going on in the world. And I love these news articles because I have seen firsthand how it does encourage students to read about different topics in myON books that they normally maybe would not just walk into a library and check out. So it has encouraged a lot of new things. But we also want to make sure that, you know, we're giving students good information and not like the typical news that's going for the scare or the shock factor. That's important to point out. So I'll just show this one here briefly. So a final farewell to the Queen. As we showed projects earlier, you can see from any book or any article, it's always easy to add it to a project or create a new project right from within the program. But the main thing to focus on here would be the way that these articles look. So it's a quick read. I can change my font size, I can make it bigger or smaller. I can see that this is an article from around the world. I can look at it, I can read it in either English, Spanish, or French, or I can have it read to me in those languages as well. So by pressing the speaker, it will read it to me in whichever language I have shown. So very helpful. My daughter's in French class right now. She enjoys this feature a lot because it's helping her with the fluency piece of speaking French. So I'm going to go back to English here. And we can see this news article. I'm logged in as a teacher. So you'll see down below, articles are published at different times. 501, 502, and 503. 503 is going to be the highest Lexile level, which means the article that you're looking at is written at the highest of the 3 levels. So there are 2 easier levels of the same article written for younger age students. And that's the only way that you can tell is by this. So you don't have students saying, oh, yours is easier than mine or mine. None of that happens. It's just a little secret that we know by looking at when it was published. So some really cool features that are built into this. So we can click on the world, the map here, and what it does, it pops up some really cool information. So obviously this article is based in London, England. So it shows us where it's at. If I click this, it'll say hello in whatever their native language is, depending on where it's at. I can get a fun fact. And then I can see how far away it is from me, how long it would take to fly there. And then it uses a really cool unit of measurement from whatever the basis of the story is. So obviously for this, it makes sense. We're going to use crowns as the unit of measurement to see how many it would take to get from where we are to there. So really showing where things are at in the world. Then there's either a video typically or a slideshow, usually both. So this one is obviously going to be some footage of the funeral. Those typically go anywhere from a minute to 2 to 3 minutes. Then a slideshow. So we can see, and are these pop-ups showing up for you? I hope so. Okay. So we can see some different pictures. Look at all those people. And then there's always a fact, which I love this. So this one, of course, is talking about Queen Elizabeth and her love of her corgis. And then there's an act. So this is recommending some reading for us to do. So traditions around her death, everything that goes into the burial of a queen, gives information about the author. And then of course it gives some citation information as well. So all of these tools are built in. Every article, every day has all of these same sort of features built in. So middle school, for example, my son, they have a 15-minute homeroom. This is their time to do the reading in the articles. There is also a teacher's guide that is published every day. So if you've got teachers that really want to try to do more with it, they can utilize a teacher's guide where it talks about different vocabulary. There's some different questions to answer. It makes it a lot more interactive and holds students a little bit more accountable. Then the part that I love is that at the bottom here, when I'm done reading it, oh, hey, you know what? That was really cool. I didn't really know all of that about, kings and queens. Maybe I want to read a little bit more about this, or, oh, England, it looks really cool there. I want to add this. So it's very simple then for me to just go ahead and add this book to my favorites, or I can launch into the book right from here. So this is another one of those examples where you see students that are getting exposure to some new topics and new things based on them just reading a brief text in this current events article, and then it kind of opens up a whole new world for them. And so then think about that. If they launch into that book and they read it, that's going to factor into ongoing recommendations then for that student. So it'll continue to build from there. So you'll see here, there's the little comprehension questions that some, may choose to do, some may not. So you can search for any topic. I'm just curious if we type in Queen Elizabeth, how many different articles we'll get. This really is like for the Arbor Day project that I put together. That's what I did, an Arbor Day search, and I got different news articles. So again, a fun way for kids to learn some neat facts about it and get some concepts in that news article format instead of only reading books about it. So you'll see we archive all of the old articles, and we can do, you can search for a lot of different things. Okay. Questions. There's so much more I could talk about with myON, but that's a good start, and we have 3 minutes left. So I want to make sure that we are addressing any questions that might have come in. Mallory?
Nothing more came through the chat, so I think we're clear there.
Awesome. And I can't see the chat. So does anyone have any questions that they want to ask live? Well, I will share, of course, myON and myON News are both on the marketplace. So definitely want to make you aware of that. Yes, myON News can absolutely be purchased by itself. In fact, that is how a lot of schools have gotten started. And it's been fun to see if you just buy myON News, kind of a fun fact here, it will still recommend books for you at the end of it. And students have access to those books that are recommended at no charge. So I think it's 50 titles can be recommended to students. So it is amazing to see the number of books. Gretna Public Schools, for example, they use myON News, but they don't have myON. And the number of books that kids are reading is unbelievable based on they're reading a news article, it's making that recommendation for a book, and then they're reading the books in myON. And so they're getting access to that, and all they're doing is paying for the myON News subscription. So pretty cool. And is it, yes, there is a discount with bundled pricing. The more products you have, because they all work together and it's all the same platform. Yes, it is. Mallory just said it. It's a literacy bundle. So yep, we would love to work with you on that for sure. And we can provide demos. We can give you access, especially for myON. It's easy just to kind of poke around. So I'm always happy to give access to my own demo site here. So you can kind of play around with it and do some different searches. So happy to do that. Okay, Craig, am I missing anything?
I don't believe so. You did mention all these are in the ESUCC marketplace, so we have pricing available there too.
Yep.
But if you do have multiple products, reach out to Heather and the team, and they'll be able to help you with that. So.
Yep, we love the marketplace. We keep getting all of the Renaissance things on it. So yes, teachers can absolutely have access to a demo. Big believer in that. We want them to see it and maybe have a few students work with it. And that's really how they see, oh, these kids are really interested in this. So yep, we would love to work with you on that. So Mallory and I will have a list of those who attended. Otherwise, of course, I don't have our slide with our email addresses, but we'll just reach out to everyone that attended. And I have to do the drawing for the Kindle because everyone who attended goes into a drawing for the Kindle. So we'll reach out. And what better way to get a Kindle than to have myON on it? So Awesome. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We appreciate it.
And we'll make this recording available on our website. So if you want to point other staff members to it, you can go there and view it on the YouTube channel there. Thank you.